I had directed a project that didn't get made called The Seven Dwarves at Disney, which there are other videos out there about if you want to see them because I quit and crashed Disney Tunes by quitting. They did like Tinkerbell 2, Tinkerbell 9, Tinkerbell 18, Treasure Planet 47. And Lasseter and Pixar took held it in complete contempt because it was garbage. You think modern filmmakers suck? It's a constant. Go back to executives. Here's actually the story of how it happened. I was a director at Disney and I did some shorts and I did some other stuff and I was bouncing around. I had animated for Toons for a couple of years as a freelancer, even when I was at Disney, because the great thing about Disney Toons was they were doing things like Winnie the Pooh and Tigger movies. And look, none of us got into the business to animate the Frog Princess. That was not fun shit animation. That was horrible to animate. Nobody wanted to animate, the three cows and whatever the hell that cow movie was. We all got into it to to animate Winnie the Pooh or Heffalumps or whatever. So a lot of us freelanced over at Disney to the feature guys. We would actually, freelance animation out of Disney Toons so we could draw on the classic characters. And I loved it. I was doing Tigger, I was doing Winnie the Pooh, I was doing Eeyore, I was doing the Heffalumps. I loved it. I was doing like Mickey Mouse for the Three Musketeers. I did the turtle in the beginning of that. I honestly, we would like just grind through the day doing the crap that Disney Future was doing. We'd all like go home and Disney Tunes because it was the classic characters, because I was doing that for a while. And then Shim Morrell found me. She was like, we can't crack the prequel to, we can't crack all these other things. And she was like, we'll give you anything you want to do. And I was like, oh, what do you got? And they were like, oh, Tinkerbell 11, these horrible sequels. And then one of them they said was, we're going to do a prequel to Snow White. And I was like, oh, in the name of God, don't do a prequel to Snow White. And they're like, no, we're going to do it. I'm like, oh, please, don't do a sequel. Don't fuck with Snow White. And they were like, oh no, we're absolutely going to fuck with Snow White. I was like, okay, then let me do it. Because I was like, I wanted to like protect it. And so I ended up coming up with this huge thing. And John Lasseter came in, he loved it. I was working, day and night producing this, something that looked much more like Lord of the Rings than Snow White, because it was all about the history of the dwarves, where they came from and who they were and why they knew the Wicked Witch and why they were living together in the woods, just guys. I mean, obviously that's not an effective strategy for reproducing, and all that other stuff. Myself and Evan Spiritopoulos, who ended up writing a lot of scripts for live action Disney sequels, we came up with this story that was a prequel that we thought was pretty good. Lasseter came in and he basically canned everything but our film, which he liked. And he was talking about moving over to Pixar, which we hoped he wouldn't, because we wanted to stay 2D. And if you look out there on the internet, there's 3D tests that I did for that. There's storyboards that I did for that. I wrote a whole script for that. Then, Sharon came to me with this, executive type and said, hey, we want Dopey to talk in this film. I'm like, yeah, no. They're like, no, we want him to talk and we want him to get emotionally traumatized so he loses his voice. You want me to make a film about a lovable character who is so emotionally traumatized at the end of the film that he refuses to speak for the rest of his life? They're like, yeah. I'm like, no. The whole point was Dopey said, can he talk? I don't know. He's never tried. That was Dopey. He was fun. He enjoyed it. He just didn't like to talk. And we played him like that. And then, they wanted to give him a trauma. We went through this and Lasseter was like, no, that's a stupid idea. And we were like, yeah, that's a stupid idea. But, they thought it was a great idea. And so one day this guy walks in my office and says, I'm your co-director, which I knew meant they were going to try to shove this story point down my throat. And I said, yeah. And it was like crazy. They wanted like some insane, like the actor wasn't Robin Williams, but imagine that bad of casting for Dopey. And you've got an idea of who they wanted. And I was like, no, you're not my co-director. He's like, yeah, I am. The boss made me a co-director. I'm like, no, you can direct it, but you're not my co-director. And I walked in her office and I said, I quit. Apparently a week later, this new director, this new executive went in and pitched it to John Lasseter. And 15 minutes later, he shut down Disney Toons as a business model. These are the kind of decisions executives make, and then directors carry the water for this stuff. And then the directors never work again, and the writers never work again. But the executives who force them to do it, they go on project to project.